Okay, guys, here's Philipp Schaedler with eXp Realty, and today I'm talking to my friend Ryan Bleecker from Consumers Titles. And Ryan, thank you so much for being on here. And could you maybe introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, so like Philip said, my name's Ryan Bleecker. I'm with Consumers Title Company. I've been in the in the title world now for about 6 years. I've worked with major underwriters. Say a name, probably worked for them. Been doing it for about 6 years now. Yeah, so a lot of title knowledge. From operations.
And by the way, I love your dad. Your dad is an amazing networker.
Oh yeah,
He's just amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
So today I just want to talk a little bit about, can you just in short version explain for some of my clients the title process? What happens when we open escrow and then goes to title and so forth?
Yeah. So the title process, just to kind of put it simply, like there's steps involved, right? So you want to sell your home, the first thing that happens, at least on the title side, I won't get into everything when it comes to the real estate transaction, but on the title side, the initial quote unquote title order is actually opened up. That is the cue for us to begin our investigation into the property, right? So we're going to get like initial documents, the taxes, we're going to start taking a look at things. The second step here is there's a person called a searcher or an examiner, and it's exactly like how it sounds. That is the actual person who looks at and investigates the property, is taking a look for liens or loans or anything that might stand out that we and you are definitely going to want to know about. Now, in this process, there is a document that comes out that's called a preliminary title report. That preliminary title report is basically the piece of paper that is showing you what the policy is going to look like at the end. And it's going to show you exactly what is on the property. It's going to show loans. It's going to show any kind of, creditor liens or judgments or anything that'll have to be taken care of in that process. And then the biggest step of all in this process is when that preliminary title report comes out, there are going to be a list of requirements that are going to be set out by the title company or me or, et cetera. It doesn't matter. This is pretty universal no matter where you go. So the title company is going to say, hey, you have these mortgages on your property. You have this judgment on your property, this mechanics lien on your property, or et cetera. And we're saying in order to close this transaction, you are going to need to take care of or pay these things. It's not like that. Nobody's going to be, surprised by that you have to pay your mortgage or your taxes or the liens that are on there, right?
And sorry to interrupt you. That would also be called, because some people ask me, that would be called a cloud on title, right? If there's mechanics lien or tax lien on it.
Yeah. So, clouds on title, that would technically be considered, or what most people would consider to be a cloud on title. And now the process to cure, that's something that we say, to cure these clouds on title, they can vary depending on what it is. But just to give you a few ideas of how this process works to cure title, it's actually a combination of efforts by people. It's title and escrow, but essentially what it comes down to cure it is the first step, obviously, is from the title side. Hey, we're going to give you a document that's going to show you clearly, what is on your property, and you're going to know. So like, half the battle is knowing, right? You don't know what you don't know. So that's where we come in. We show you, hey, this is where you're at, In terms of the curing process, if it involves any type of money, generally speaking, it's a very simple process. You would go to your escrow, and escrow is going to issue something called a demand, right? Basically, they send a letter or they make a phone call or some type of correspondence. And while the official name is a demand, technically all that is they send off something that tells that company, hey, you need to tell us exactly how much money we owe you. That's what a demand is. And then that company, has a legal responsibility to respond in a timely manner, whatever it may be, whatever they outset. And then it comes in, and then escrow will give that demand letter to title. And we can say, okay, good. Now we know that we can pay this, and it'll be taken care of at the close of your escrow. So that's how we cure things, especially if it involves money. Not everything involves money, but that process is fairly universal. And don't worry about it too much. We know what it takes to cure everything that might appear on your preliminary title report, and we will give you that information. There,
Okay,
you'll
so,
never
so
be in the
people
dark.
shouldn't be like panicking. They're like, oh my God,
Not at all.
now because you guys take care, you got it covered.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We work hand in hand with you, the real estate agent, the escrow, and we help everybody along in this process. Nobody's ever going to be in the dark, you know.
Right. Okay. And what would you say the time frame is from the time you start with the title, from opening escrow to having something like this resolved? Is that like, what was that, weeks, days? What's the
Yeah,
time?
so you know that can vary. It'll depend on the type of cloud that's on title, so to speak.
Right.
You know, I've seen, you know, clouds on title, whether it be a mechanics lien or some other type of lien or a tax lien. I've seen those resolved in a matter of weeks, sometimes days. It just
Right.
depends. You know, and then there are some problems that can occur, and this is a very small amount of problems. So I don't want you to think that this is common, but there are some problems that are obviously going to require a lot more time. You
Right.
know,
Okay. Makes sense.
usually, yeah, those kinds of problems involve
It's on
usually.
an individual basis, right?
It really is, but your more generic problems or clouds that you'll encounter on title are not world-ending. You know, they're not gonna, you know.
Right. And for some of my clients who may not know what liens are, mechanics liens obviously would be if somebody worked on the house and it didn't get paid, right? Or tax lien if somebody didn't pay the property taxes and the county or the state is after them. Just to make that clear. Okay. Now, does it ever happen that there is like recordings of, let's say, a wife, husband and wife, or owner owns a house on title, but somebody else makes a claim on it? Has that ever happened that somebody says, no, this is actually, I used to live there and this was my family and this belongs to me? Does there stuff like that happen?
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about something that's very few and far between. It can happen this way. I've often talked about how, you know, there could be an instance like here's a scenario that I haven't personally encountered, but I use as an example. Okay. Say 60 years ago, a person passed away. They had a son or an heir on the property. Nobody knew, right? They thought they were alone. The property ends up going to the state because nobody claimed the property, goes to flood or something like that. So property ends up getting sold, and then there's 2 or 3 subsequent owners, and then, you know, a new homeowner comes in, and lo and behold, this son or this heir from 60 years ago pops up.
Wow.
And can create a problem, quote unquote, on the property. Now, I want to be very clear. This is nothing that I have experienced or have seen in my 6 years in title. It's not to say something like this can't happen.
Right.
But it's you know, it's worth saying that I have never seen it in the thousands upon thousands of transactions that I've worked on. I've never seen something like that. But it is possible for you know, those instances to occur. Anything is possible. But what I have found, generally speaking, when you're talking about a person making a claim on ownership, generally speaking, that person who's making either false or, you know, true claims to title, they're usually known by the seller, and more often than not, it involves usually a family member, and sometimes a disgruntled family member.
Right. Okay.
You know, it just happens that way. Families, it can be sticky. You know, so like.
And sorry, I interrupted you earlier with the process of the title. So I think did we go through the whole thing? Because basically you said because you clear up any clouds, right?
Yeah, clear up any clowns, because we're going to give you the requirements in the title policy, in the title, in the preliminary title report. And then between you, the realtor, and escrow, and the seller or the buyer, you know, like not the buyer, but the seller, you'll get all the information in. The only tip that I have about this whole process that I could give to the homeowner, to the consumer, that's really going to help them is there is something called a statement of information. And I always tell agents, and I always tell the consumer, that is the one document, and it'll take you a minute, if that, to fill out and send back in. Get that piece of paper in sooner rather than later. Especially if you're not in escrow just yet. Maybe you're doing a pre-escrow, or you're starting your selling process a little earlier. You know, and this is something you should do if you may expect that there's something out there. But getting this statement of information, which is just a piece of paper that has your name, your past residences, past names, if you know, married, not married before, married now. And this will help us get all of the information to you that you need about any potential clouds, like we were just talking about on title.
And where would they get this statement of information? Is it something they have to compile themselves or from you guys?
Yeah, from us. Yeah. So like if you know that this is coming and you know, you can, especially as the agent, your agent, you have your preferred title company, us here.
Yep.
That's something that I can provide to you so you can always have on hand to give to a new client that's going to be going through this process.
Okay.
And then once you get all of that in, and you know, the process is really simple from this point. You know, the order is opened, somebody searches it. The preliminary title report comes out. That's where all the clouds might, or might not be.
Got it.
Then, you know, we, you know, satisfy any requirements, like the demands that I was talking about.
Right.
And then, you know, we have a final, you know, preparation at the very end, and we close. It's really about, I mean, in general, this is really only about 8 steps to get through title.
Okay, that sounds pretty simple. A question I had that just popped in my mind. Do you guys deal or catch encroachments? Like if somebody is on the neighbor's property, is that something you guys deal with or no?
No, that is not something generally that title companies will deal with. The only time that we would necessarily have anything to do with an encroachment from a neighboring property is if there was something recorded, you know, addressing that. Or if somebody made a claim that there was an encroachment. But generally speaking, you know, that could actually be a whole other discussion.
Right. I'm sure. Yeah.
That involves a lot of I could speak on that, but yeah. But no, generally speaking, that is not something that title does. We can help point it out to you. We definitely have solutions for you. We can definitely point you in the right directions to solve something like that.
Okay.
You know, and rest assured, we know how to do that here.
Right.
But at least for today in our discussion, that would be, that we could spend 20, 30 minutes on that alone.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. No, at this point, I just wanted to kind of talk about what you just explained, the process, so people have a better idea what the title.
But you know what, a good rule of thumb to kind of pin at the very end of that, even if you're unsure, generally speaking, anything involving title, whether it's encroachments or, you know, even stranger things, you know, like avulsion, or like maybe you live on a beach and your property's being eroded away.
Right.
You can always ask us. And I would say about 99% of the time, we will have an answer or solution or get you going in the right direction. So don't think you can't bring us those things.
Okay, that sounds good. That's good to know. Absolutely. Okay, well, that was very informative. So now, quickly before we close, I had a question for you. Can you tell us kind of like what's the most strangest process you ever had with title or experience or story you've heard of in regards to that?
Yeah, the craziest story I have, something that occurred in, you know, about, I want to say in 2015, 2016, when I was just getting started in the business. There was an elaborate fraud or scam, whatever you want to call it, that occurred in Beverly Hills. There was a woman, she had a home in Beverly Hills, and then she had a summer home in France. And she would religiously take about 3 to 4 months out of the year and stay in France. She was single. Nobody really looked after her home in Beverly Hills. Well, there was a team. It took a team of people, that these fraudsters, they knew her routine. They were stealing her mail. They actually had like reports where they were stealing her mail. And she leaves to Europe, to France, and these people were right there ready to go. As soon as she left to France, they had a woman who, you know, later found out like she may have ended up being some type of actor. They had actors, they rented vehicles like a Rolls Royce.
Wow.
This woman actor, you know, they just referred to her as an actor, showed up at this woman's bank to begin the process of selling the home.
To impersonate her?
In person. It showed up in person at the bank.
But she was impersonating the owner?
She was impersonating the owner.
Oh, wow.
Goes to the bank, begins this process of selling her home, right?
Oh my God.
With a team of people surrounding her.
Wow.
Right? She, you know, they had car rentals. She came to it with a Rolls Royce. She made phone calls ahead. The bank manager was there to greet her.
Wow.
And guess what? Nobody actually had ever met this woman before, so she pulled it off impeccably.
Wow.
So mind you, while this is all going on, our real homeowner is in France. Right? So not only did she impersonate, not only did they rent vehicles and have everything, but they actually got face-to-face with a notary, face-to-face with an agent, face to face with the lender, right?
Right.
And they pulled it off.
They pulled it off? They
They
succeeded?
pulled it off. Yeah, they succeeded in this elaborate fraud scam, right?
Wow.
And so this woman's in France, comes home and finds a whole new family living in her home for the last months.
Oh, jeez. Are you serious?
Yeah. And so the title company, and this is, you know, the notary that was used was this title company's notary.
Right.
The bank was on the hook, but essentially what ends up happening is this title company that I worked for ended up paying out tens of millions of dollars for this.
Really?
Fraud. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the
So
crazy.
to reimburse her.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was so elaborate and so well done. Believe it or not, the FBI actually got involved with
Oh
this.
my God, that's a crazy story. I didn't expect a crazy story like that, but that's really that's like
I
over
mean,
the top.
yeah, I mean, that is an absolute crazy story. I mean, there are, unfortunately, some very unscrupulous people out there, but
Right.
this was probably the most elaborate scam and fraud that I've ever seen.
And since you mentioned this story, what comes to mind is, because lately, especially since during COVID, we had a lot of wire fraud, and I would tell clients that always be careful when you wire money to your escrow company, call them first, confirm the account number, confirm everything in person, because people have done really well with faking the emails and the letterhead from the escrow company, and it comes in the email with a link. And just, what was it, in San Diego, there was a couple last year, I think their $120,000 down payment just disappeared.
Oh yeah,
because they send it to some of these guys who are just crooks and take advantage of that. So
yeah,
along the same lines.
I mean, to piggyback off that, about 2 years ago, another company that I was at, an escrow officer was defrauded, and this escrow officer actually wired off $1 million.
Wow. Oh
yeah,
my God.
Unfortunate, very unfortunate.
And I know once they do that, it's really apparent. It's really hard to trace the money. They never find the money again. It's gone.
It's gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
hey,
but yeah.
Amazing. Ryan.
And I don't want anybody to stress, Philip, real quick. Don't stress.
Right.
Most of the fraud that occurs out there, believe it or not, it's very sad to say this, but 90+% of the fraud that occurs out there
right.
actually occurs by somebody It usually occurs inside. It usually occurs inside the family, or it's usually somebody that I'm sad to say that, but I don't want people thinking that there's people out there,
what? And this is why it's important, I think, to work with people, for clients, to work with realtors and title companies that you can trust, and escrow companies that have been in the business for a long time, have a reputable position in the market. And, that's, I think, key here, absolutely. And that's kind of
100%
what this is all about. Hey, Ryan, thank you so much. This was very good information. I really appreciate the time. I know you're a busy guy. And I wish you a great rest of the day and lots of success. And I'll probably call you soon because Brentwood, I should have a listing coming up in May. So then,
congratulations.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Phil.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.